Have you ever had an idea just take hold of you so completely that it almost feels like it came from somewhere else? Well, today we're diving into a pretty radical idea that says your mind can absolutely be hacked, but more importantly, it gives us a blueprint for how to build a defense system. All right, so let's get right into it. This first part is all about challenging something we take for granted, something so basic about ourselves, and honestly, it can be a little unsettling. Now, I mean, really think about that for a second. That voice in your head, the one you think of as you, where do its ideas, its worries, its sudden urges actually come from? We just assume we know the answer, but the source material we're looking at today argues that's exactly where the problem begins. You know, we all like to think we're in the driver's seat of our own mind, right? The sole author of our own story. But a concept called the tan paradigm suggests this cozy little belief might be a total illusion. So what this paradigm says is that our minds are less like a private fortress and more like a bustling public square, with ideas constantly flying in from the outside. And it puts a pretty shocking number on just how many of our thoughts are just visitors. Yeah, 99%. The claim here is that a staggering 99% of your thoughts are not actually generated by you. Instead, the source calls them mind parasites, a really provocative term that's meant to frame them as invaders that are definitely not on your team. So, what exactly are these invaders? Well, you might know them by another name: memes. And no, we're not just talking about funny cat pictures here. In the original scientific sense, memes are units of culture, ideas that get into our heads and then literally fight for our attention, for our belief, for our neural real estate. So that begs the question, right? How can an idea, something you can't even see or touch, act like a living thing? Well, the answer comes from a really powerful scientific concept that puts this whole problem into focus. That's where the theory of mimetics comes in. It basically says that ideas have a life of their own. And get this, they don't care about the truth, and they definitely don't care about your happiness. Their only goal, like any virus, is to survive and spread, using our minds as the perfect hosts. And it works just like a biological virus, following this super simple three-step life cycle. First, an idea has to infect a mind. Then it might mutate a little, maybe get simpler, more emotional, easier to share. And finally, the ultimate goal, to replicate by making you spread it to other people. Think about it, like a crazy new diet trend. It infects a few people online, it mutates into a catchy slogan, then it replicates when everyone you know starts talking about it. Well, the source argues this exact same thing happens with these bigger infections, that sudden wave of anxiety you feel, that all-consuming political outrage. The theory says they're not just your feelings. They're viral code hijacking your brain's hardware to reproduce itself. Okay, so if our minds are basically this vulnerable to infection, what in the world are we supposed to do about it? How do we stop being a passive host and actually start building a mental immune system? This is where the whole thing kind of flips on its head. The goal isn't to be smarter by just collecting more and more ideas. The goal is to be virtuous, which in this context means keeping your mind sterile, clean and uninfected by all those parasitic ideas. And this breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you have the smart mind, which is like a computer with all its ports wide open, downloading everything without a filter. Super vulnerable. On the other side, you have the virtuous mind. Think of it like a sealed clean room, a protected space where nothing gets inside without being rigorously checked out first. So how do you build this clean room? The tool you need is what the source calls a cognitive firewall. Now, this isn't just a passive thing. It's an active, conscious process. You don't just soak up information anymore. You stop every single idea at the gate, and you put it in quarantine for a serious inspection. So what happens in quarantine? You ask one simple, but honestly, devastatingly effective question of every belief, every desire, every bit of outrage that tries to plant itself in your mind. Does this idea actually serve me, my goals, my peace of mind, or is it just using my energy to spread itself? And when you start doing this day in and day out, when you build and maintain this firewall, you start moving towards something really powerful. You stop being a puppet for outside ideas, and you start becoming the master of your own mind. What does that mean exactly? It means that all that useless outrage, that unproductive anxiety, those divisive ideas, they stop with you. You become a full stop, the end of the line. You consciously refuse to be a carrier and you break the chain. And that right there is the ultimate prize.
intellectual sovereignty. It's that feeling of knowing that the thoughts you choose to act on are actually your own, selected by you for your own reasons, and not just the ones that were catchy enough to get past the door. Look, at the end of the day, this isn't just some abstract thought experiment. This is about taking back control of your attention, your emotional energy, and your freedom of thought from this invisible war of ideas that's happening all around us every single day. Here's one of the most direct, maybe even jarring claims from the source. It reframes an emotion like anger, not as some personal response, but as a symptom. The symptom of a mind virus that has successfully hijacked your system for its own selfish purpose. And if that last one didn't stop you in your tracks, this one might. The next time you feel that powerful need to share a strong opinion, this framework asks you to just pause and wonder, is this really me talking, or am I just the loudspeaker for a thought pathogen that's trying to replicate? So this is the mindset it's all building towards. It's like a personal mission statement, a declaration of mental independence. It's about treating your mind like a space that is so valuable, so sacred, that you enforce the absolute strictest security protocols to protect it. If you take away just one thing from all of this today, let it be this. You can't even begin to free your mind until you first seriously consider the possibility that it isn't actually free right now. That awareness, that's the beginning of everything. And so I'm going to leave you with that ultimate firewall question to carry with you. Take a look at the ideas that bounce around in your head every day, the worries, the opinions, the desires. Which of them are truly serving you? And which ones are just using you as a host to survive?